People with a higher education tend to vote liberal. People say this all the time. Is it true?
Hey, so I just want to touch on a point that Shameless L is mentioning here. If you have time, go back and watch this full video. It's very good. She talks about how people in rural settings tend to vote conservative more than people in big city settings because they're just not as exposed to different things. So what I would like to clarify is that I live in a town called Sault Ste. Marie, and we are 8 hours away from Toronto. We're 3 hours away from Sudbury. We're 8 hours away or 9 hours away from Thunder Bay. We're 9 hours away from Ottawa. We're not a big city. We have about 75,000 people, but we're not a big city. But my city tends to vote conservative. Now, my city has always been like 10 years behind anything that happens in Toronto. So like music styles that have come to Toronto don't kind of reach us until like 5-10 years later. Clothing styles that are in Toronto don't hit us till like 5-10 years later. We're kind of behind in all that because we're so far away from the big city. Now I want to say I feel myself to be educated. I went to school for 3 years in business in university, and then I went back to my local college to study human resources, and now I work in privately in the healthcare sector. But when I say privately, I mean away from people. I get to work in a back office where I don't have to deal with customers or patients. So in my years of work employment, I was a manager many times. I managed an Ardene's store for 6 years. I managed a Susie Shear store for 6 years. I worked for a call center where I was the program manager for 150 people. So I've done a lot of management things, and then my HR background has provided information for that as well. What I would also like to add is that I've traveled a lot. I've been to other states in the United States. I've been to other provinces. I've been to other countries. I've seen how social constructs take place in other places other than my own city. So I've come into contact with trans people, with people of color, with Indigenous people, with the people who live in the Dominican Republic or the people who live in Cuba and talk about how difficult their lives are. I've been able to interact with many different types of people over the years, whereas a lot of people in my city have not. They've only interacted with each other. And because our city's so small, even our colored population is very low. We have very few people of color in our city. We have very few trans people in our city. And heaven forbid if we did, they probably don't tell people that they're trans. We don't have a lot of LGBTQ people in this city. And the ones that we do have are scared to speak out because this entire city is a bunch of conservative, closed-minded people. In my city, we are directly attached to Indigenous reserves where people live literally within 5 minutes of the city. You can get on an Indigenous reserve. And the general consensus of the people in this city is that Aboriginal people need to learn the value of hard work. I've heard this from many, many people. Just in passing, just in conversation, not necessarily because of the election. I'm talking my whole life. My whole life, I have heard people in this city talk down about immigrants and Aboriginal people, or Indigenous people, sorry. The people in this city are ignorant when it comes to what the Indigenous peoples went through. They are absolutely ignorant. And the people up in higher ups in our city are trying to make amends for that. They are trying to concede that we live on Indigenous territory. They're trying to do the best that they can. But so many people are resisting it because they don't care about people other than themselves. So while it's one thing to say that liberals are more intelligent, I simply see it as liberals have more experience with the people that need help. We have more experience dealing with people who have different cultures than we do. We learn from immigrants. We learn from Indigenous peoples. We learn from the LGBTQ peoples. I've learned more in the last 3 months on Eurotalk and World Talk about trans people, about Aboriginal people, about the people of Ireland and their settlers, about the people in Australia with the Indigenous people that were there. I've learned a lot of information on this platform. And I feel that from that information, I have a better understanding of what minorities go through. I've learned about people with disabilities. I've learned about schmex workers. I've learned about all sorts of people that I was never familiar with before. And that has given me a better perspective on what our Canada needs to be and who we need to stand up for. I can say that after attending the Pierre Poilievre rally in my city, that I was absolutely disappointed with the people in my city. Absolutely disappointed with the fact that people called me a Nazi for standing there with a sign. For people that told me that my John A. Macdonald supported or created residential schools, they told me that residential schools were asked for by the Indigenous people and that they wanted the education that they got. These people seriously have no idea about their own Canadian history because it was never taught in school, therefore it didn't exist. So it's not that liberals are more intelligent. People who vote liberal are more intelligent. It's that people who vote liberal have more exposure to people who have less than we do. Conservative people see themselves in a tiny little bubble where everything only affects them. And it shouldn't, if it doesn't affect them, they don't care about it. They don't want their tax dollars going to it. They don't want anyone taking care of these people. They don't care. If it doesn't affect their little circle, they don't care. And that is not how you create a successful society. That is not how you boost up your country. Canada is about different demographics. It's about different people. We are a mosaic of all different people, and we should support and love all different people, religions, culture, skin color, gender, orientation, whatever. We need to accept all of these people because they're all Canadian. And unless you can show me that these specific people are hateful and cruel, then I stand with them. And unfortunately, the Christian nationalist movement has taught people that being selfish is acceptable. Jesus stood for helping the poor. Jesus stood for feeding the children. These are the things that Jesus stood for. And even though I'm Wiccan and I don't believe in the Bible, I believe that the people who do honestly felt that Jesus stood for good things. And that is what should be celebrated. Not putting people aside because their gender is different. Not putting people aside because they're immigrants. That's not what the Bible stood for. So yeah, I agree. Liberal people are not just better educated, they're more world experienced. And if you want to learn something about the rest of the world and what goes on, maybe you should travel. Maybe you should do some more reading. Maybe you should do some more research. Because if you're just voting conservative because it's the difference between the lost liberal decade and what the conservatives actually have planned for this country, you have no idea what you're voting for.